Hi kids, welcome to Building on the Rock. Today is a little more gruesome than most days, but it is an important story, and it has to do with when the Ammonites decide to attack a city of Israel, when Saul happened to be nearby. Now Saul was not king yet, he had not been crowned, but that doesn't mean he still can't do God's work. So we pick up in chapter 11, at verse 1. Nahash was the king of Ammon. He and his army went up to Jabesh Gilead. They surrounded it and got ready to attack it. All of the men of Jabesh spoke to Nahash. They said, "Make a peace treaty with us, then we'll be under your control." Nahash, the king of Ammon, replied, "I will make a peace treaty with you, but I'll do it only on one condition. You must let me put out the right eye of every one of you. I want to bring shame on the whole nation of Israel." The elders of Jabesh said to him, "Give us 7 days to report back to you. We'll send messengers all through Israel. If no one comes to save us, we'll hand ourselves over to you." The messengers came to Gibeah of Saul. They reported to the people the terms Nahash had required. Then all of the people sobbed out loud. Just then Saul was coming in from the fields. He was walking behind his oxen. He asked, "What's wrong with the people? Why are they sobbing?" He was told what the men of Jabesh said. When Saul heard their words, the Spirit of God came on him with power. He burned with anger. He got a pair of oxen and cut them into pieces. He sent the pieces by messengers all through Israel. They announced, "You must follow Saul and Samuel. If you don't, this is what will happen to your oxen." Terror of the Lord fell on the people, so all of them came together with one purpose in mind. We'll get back to that story in a minute, but naturally we know they won the battle because God was with them, and well, Israel kind of didn't die there. Yeah. But people often have an issue with this whole cutting up the oxen, but it is important to note two things. One, this was Saul's oxen, so it's not like he was taking someone else's oxen and cutting them up. And two, it was God's righteous anger. Now why was God angry? Well, this was an attempt to disgrace God through man. People were afraid, and people wanted peace with the nation that wanted to destroy God. They wanted to bring shame. It's not that they wanted the land or that they wanted something they had. All they wanted was to bring shame to Israel. How else could God respond but anger, that they would be so rude and arrogant against him? And that, more importantly, Israel was just so afraid. Did they not know who they were fighting with? Did they not know who could protect them? The fact that this was even considered makes God angry. It's not that he couldn't stop them. He could. It was the fact that Israel was so lost in its way, as we'll see in another lesson, that they were afraid of another nation when God had already proven to them time and time and time again that he was their leader. He was their savior. And that he would protect them from the world. Now God used Saul, the king they wanted, but didn't yet crown, to send this message that they were bringing death upon themselves, both by the hand of the Ammonites, but also by the hand of God, by not following God's commands to protect his people, to care for his people. The fact that they weren't already rallying to go fight was proof positive that God needed to put them back in line. Because if you don't fear God, you're not doing it right. God is not something we can just walk past or, just forget about. God is always there, and he always has a plan, and he always wants us to do something. The question is, do we do it or do we fall? But that isn't the entire story. After they win, because naturally God is on their side, the people said to Samuel, "Who asked, is Saul going to rule over us? Bring those people to us. We'll put them to death." But Saul said, "We won't put anyone to death today. After all, this is the day the Lord has saved Israel. Then Samuel said to the people, "Come on, let us go to Gilgal. There we will agree to have Saul as our king." Now they do go and seek Saul as their king, but that's not the important part here. Is that God was angry at them, yet they still lived because they feared God enough to do what he asked. Saul, at this point, didn't have the ego or the pride to consider that he was the victor here, that he saved them. No, it was God, the Lord our God, and it always will be. We have people who do things, yes, but ultimately, God could smite us down at any point, and God can save us at any point. Anything good that happens does come from God, and that is why we should be afraid of getting on his bad side. Well, I hope you enjoyed this lesson today, and I hope you enjoy building this. I'll show you how to build this little piece of bloody oxen meat in our video. We're going to be building a nice big chunky piece of meat. To start, you're going to need a red 2x3, and you place it exactly 1, 2, 3, 4 studs out from the edge. This will be important later, just as a frame of reference. You should see 4 studs on one side, 5 studs on the other, and a red piece right here. Then, you will take this dark red 1x2, place it right here, and then you will take this nugget 2x2, place it right here. This is to help get the marble texture of a piece of meat, and it looks a lot better. Before we finally add a nice brown 2x3 to round out the bottom sear. Then, once you have that, you're going to want to start working on the bones, which will be simply two tall 1x2s placed in this configuration, leaving a gap at the edge right here. You then attach this, making an L shape. You see how it's an L shape with one of the red studs sticking out in the front. Now that you have that, you will grab this another nugget 2x2 and another 1x2 dark red piece, which will then be given another dark red piece on top in dark 2x4 fashion. Finally, to make sure everything's relatively even, grab 2 more dark red 1x2s and place them on the other side of the bone. Now, then we gotta do a little bit more of the blood, because you know it's bloody meat. It's bloody meat. Don't eat bloody meat. And most of the stuff you'll find at the supermarket actually is just the fat seeping out of the meat, so it's fine. Just would recommend eating it anyway. You then grab this sloped 2x3 up front to make it look like it's dripping, and 2 perfectly slanted 2x2s sliding down, so it's kind of like a slide of blood. Once you have that, all you have to do is take your other brown 2x3, place it right there, and to cover up the bone, a nugget 2x2. And there you go. You got yourself a nice little piece of meat. And if you want, you can just kind of drop some of the blood off and, you know, make it look less bloody. You know, just cut out all the red pieces. Not the dark red. You need that for structure. But, yeah, the red pieces. And, voila. Dig in. I hope you enjoyed this lesson today. And I'll see you again soon.